So then, we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu, the 61st chapter and chapter 1:8 gives us a very distinct explanation of these layers, and since we are during the time of the restoration period, or known as after the 1,000 years of deceit that ended in 2009, then the nations are obviously going through a transition where then China must lead the way as far as trade is concerned. There is then the first transition, and there is a second transition later on when the sons of Ishmael then will help the merchants via then the crude or oil for transportation. Well, let's then understand another factor as far as the war and the at least an extension of this time of the deceit led by the United States, and they are involved with many war fronts at the moment. And the French are involved, the Germans are involved, the Australians are involved, and the Britons are also involved. And there is a lot of speculation of what the world then is going to be in the near future. So then, let's try to divide a bit from East and West. East is doing great at the moment, and West is obviously not doing so great. Firstly then, these war fronts in Iraq, Syria, in many places of the Middle East, led by the Americans, then they are claiming of having a problem with the Islamic State. However, it is true a portion of these people being a bit extremist. It's also true the way they deal with scoundrels in their countries. However, let's try to understand what the Islamic State is trying to do also with Egypt. And then we find ourselves then reading the 11th chapter of Daniel, where then in the 8th verse of the 11th chapter explains then the relationship with Northern Kingdom, known as the Soviet Union, because they have returned to their original state. However, they are going through some changes also, but they must become greater than the first, as per the instructions of Daniel the prophet. And then the relationship of the Northern Kingdom or the Soviet Union and the Egyptians. At the moment, there is then the desire of the Islamic State also to have lots of influence and destruction in Egypt. Thus then the relationship of the Northern Kingdom and Egypt must be then established. It is very clear, the instructions given by Daniel the prophet. Verse 1:4 explains then, and in later years then the Northern Kingdom shall come with a great army and much equipment, meaning military equipment. So the first objective of the Northern Kingdom prior of these, verse 1:4 explains obviously of having a deal with Egypt concerning arms, arming the Egyptians with Soviet weapons in any kind and capacity they think of. So let's understand these verses, because it is extremely important, and then we can understand why they were given the title, coming then later with a great army and then much equipment. When the word explains, coming from the Holy Hebrews, as far as much equipment, truly means a lot. A lot of equipment means the top of the world as far as arms are concerned. So until we reach this point, as per the instructions of Prophet Daniel, we understand the relationship with a starting point of the Soviets and then Egypt, and is absolutely certainly and obvious that the Soviets must then make a deal with Egypt and then providing them with arms of many sorts, of every kind, so then Egypt can make its own decisions. However, the Holy Instructions does not explain a precise relationship with Egypt as far as how they should conduct, but it does give the title of the Northern Kingdom as then a country later on coming with a great army and much equipment. So from these understanding we can simply say very precisely then providing arms for Egypt of Soviet source. These then should regather then the balance that thus far is nearly on the hands of the Americans because of these concocted new fronts of war. Firstly then was considered only having a short campaign. Later on then became a few days, and then later on only air strikes, no ground soldiers, and then it's already changing. Then they're going to have more nations involved in ground soldiers, and then not only these, but then France got involved, and then the Britons got involved, and then the war goes and goes and goes and goes, as it was in many times. They claim to have a God. The United States has a God of its own, a Savior of its own, and proclaiming wars everywhere. So then, because of these, then comes later on the relationship then of the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. Because after a deal with Egypt is made, then you can read section of the 10th, 11th, 12th verses of the 11th chapter, then shifts the relationship from the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. This means Egypt will know what to do with the equipment. It gives us then a positive outcome of the relationship. That's why the instructions then shifts from Egypt as a done deal. They will to know what to do, and then the relationship of Northern Kingdom and Africa. Then explains the relationship also with the violent ones, explaining then those people beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, and then lots of skirmishes of the Northern Kingdom in Africa. But these much later. At this point, in order to have the balance properly in this world, then the Soviets must make a move. And as far as the sanctions, Mr. Putin should not be concerned, because other nations can provide what's lacking, other than obviously they have lots of gas. They make a deal with China, so then the balance of power can be then obviously in equilibrium. Later on they're going to evaluate more than the relationship of the Northern Kingdom and Africa, because we understand as long as the Soviets they make a deal with Egypt, then the rest of it comes afterwards. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.